I'm Josh Sigman, and I'm a mortgage lender. I'm also a geek for money, not just earning it and saving it, but literally everything about it. I love that money has rules. It has its truths. I love investment strategies, and I love making money work for us. For so many, money is emotional. For me, it's logical, like a puzzle. My passion is also helping others with their money. I love looking at people's finances, dissecting their puzzle, and rebuilding with strategy and purpose, and I'm really good at it. I'm making this podcast about my money strategies, not the things that are written in books or sold in programs. It's a podcast outlining the lessons I've learned and used for the past 15 years. These strategies help me and those who use them save more, give more, create wealth, and retire early. Let me teach you how to build your net worth. You ready? Welcome to Sigman Sense. You want a pink thing on here?
I do.
Where's our cups? We don't have anything to advertise. Whatever.
Where are the cups?
Hey, this is your job. I don't know where they're at.
Sorry, because I didn't have coffee. I don't even think about it.
All right. You ready?
I was born ready.
And go. Welcome back to Sigman Sense.
Welcome.
Welcome back. We're going to have a fun conversation today about conversations that you should have about money before you get married.
This is so fun.
If you have a kid that might be getting married, if you're not married yet, pay attention. Share.
If you are engaged and about to get married,
you definitely want to pay close attention to this conversation.
If you have kids that are engaged to be married, you're going to want to share this episode.
That's right.
Because as I've pointed out before, I got married when I was 23.
And you knew everything.
The only thing that mattered was I'm in love with you, and that's it. Like nothing else matters, which at the end of the day is the
Fairy
answer,
tales,
right?
Roses.
Love conquers all, right?
At least 50% of the time.
So that's, as a young person, you're not thinking about kids. You're not thinking about college. You're not thinking about retirement. You're thinking
about ass.
And you're thinking about how beautiful the wedding's going to be. And what's my ring going to look like?
Not me.
No? What do boys think? Only ass.
Yeah.
Just ass.
I'm going to lock this down for the next 50 years.
Are you thinking about, can I enjoy this ass for the next 50 years? Does that come into play? You're not joking.
God bless you, Christy.
You're not joking at all.
No, I think that the love thing obviously is massive parts of it, right? But I also think a lot of people get married because it's the next logical step.
I think that does happen a lot.
That happens a lot more than people care to admit. They don't think it through other than we've been together for a couple of years. We're going to shit or get off the pot. It's the next step, right?
And I think the biggest thing is that we just really get along. And
there's a lot of peer pressure. You start showing up to lots of your friends' weddings and all your friends' weddings. And how many times you heard a friend say, I'm always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
That's true. That's so true. And I remember my mom always saying, wait until you're 30. You should wait until you're 30. And I never understood that. I am very happily married, and me and Randy are doing better than we ever have. However, I do look at my friends that are in their 30s and have not gotten married, or maybe you're remarrying. What an opportunity because you can make your punch list of your non-negotiables, right? And you're really in tune with who you are.
Write that down. I want to talk about
You're settled in with who you are as a person for the most part. Mm-hmm. Did you know that the brain is not fully developed till you're 24?
Well, men are like 35.
Seriously?
Yeah, that's why we're children until much later than you guys.
Oh, heavens. I thought we were on the same brain growth path.
No.
Oh, man.
So the only goal of the male species is to procreate the species. That is all we think about until we can't. Which is when we're dead.
We just had that conversation with our daughter. We were like, look, you need to understand. So.
Jesus, you're having this. That's not fun. Okay.
The conversations that have been happening inside the Rouse house these days are things that, however, I mean, I should write a parenting manual because I feel like we have covered so many things. Anyways, point is, it's really hard to imagine the bigger things in life at 23 with a beautiful ring on your finger and the man of your dreams down on one knee and, all of those things, right? Yep. So what should you be talking about? And should it be between the two of y'all? Should there be a third party, like a mediator?
Right. Probably easier with a mediator.
Probably easier. Yeah.
Awkward sometimes, but easier. So I actually have a little bit of experience with this. So I was fortunate enough to be asked to officiate about almost a dozen weddings. I think
the
it was
Reverend.
10.
The Reverend.
The Rev.
I'll never
The
forget.
Rev. Call me the Rev.
I'll never forget. I was at a wedding that you had officiated, and someone came up to me and said, "Do you know where we can hear him preach on Sundays?"
Preach to me, babe. Preach.
I'm like, the Reverend?
It's funny. Yeah, I've been very, very fortunate. I've had a few people that asked me to officiate the weddings. And so what we were actually talking about a little bit in part today is what I got to talk to all of them about. Because I take it very seriously, right? It's not just a show up and read out of a book and figure it out.
There is a lot of responsibility that comes
with
that.
There is. And my batting average is still pretty darn good. I think I'm at 90% are still married. And so that's better than most.
That's great. Yeah.
And I'm not officiating any weddings anymore, for the record, because it takes a lot of weekends.
You have to see the Rev in his
right
in his house.
Wait till my kids are out of my household, and then we'll get back to it. But what I did require of everyone that I officiated the weddings with was that we had to do 8 weeks of, we'll call it marriage counseling, even though I'm not a marriage counselor. I'm not qualified from that perspective. I just wanted to have some conversations because I do feel like being married 16 years, I have at least some real world experience.
Yeah.
Some of the good, some of the bad. And I think it's easier to learn by other people's landmines, not try and figure out on your own. Right. Mm-hmm. So we'll definitely talk about that today. But before we do, I think there were a couple of questions since the last episode that you wanted to touch base on. Make sure we get those knocked out.
We had someone
email
in, the sigmansense@gmail.com. Don't forget to send us questions. And the one I'm picking today is about cash. And I find this interesting because
cash will go.
This is not the only person that I have heard this question from, or at least been a part of a conversation about. Okay. And it's about the idea of, is cash going to be irrelevant at some point? So we all know that during this coronavirus and COVID-19 and all of that, we're in a coin shortage. I'm not really sure why, but we're in a coin shortage. So I'd love to hear that. So that has come up. And then, is cash going to be irrelevant? And should we pull it out of banks, stash it under our mattress, or keep it at home? Right. Or is that stupid? Because then at some point when we go to try to use it, it won't be worth anything.
Got it. Okay. Good questions. If the end of the world comes, cash would be irrelevant. Until then, I don't think it'll be irrelevant. Right. So there's plenty of YouTube videos you can watch about why to do Bitcoin or why to buy gold or alternatives. Bartering systems for sure have been around.
Actually, someone, one of the pieces of advice was to, in the event that does happen, to buy silver, I think is what was said.
Silver is an example. Yeah. So, here's where this is coming from, right? So, we are printing up trillions of dollars of fake money. By definition, there's nothing to back it. We're in a budget deficit, so we're devaluing the US dollar. All that means is that you can buy less with the same amount of money. That's all it means. So it means it costs more to buy a good or a service, right? So there's lots of examples in world history of, But
isn't that inflation?
Well, yeah. So when you devalue the dollar, there's absolutely going to be inflation sooner rather than later. And how well the Fed combats that with fiscal policy will determine like how much inflation there really is. And there's been some countries that have had out of control inflation. Certainly great examples are wartime or post-wartime countries. Germany is a great example. All of a sudden, the Deutschmark for a moment was worth not very much when after World War II, when it was more important to have a loaf of bread or a carton of cigarettes, and those were tradable, tangible goods, right? All over the South Americas and the Central Americas, we've seen this in Argentina. We've seen, Argentina went from one of the wealthiest nations in the world, top 10, I believe, at one time, to massive corruption and devaluation of the dollar and inflation. We've seen it in Mexico when pesos went to 100 pesos to buy what 1 peso could do just a few 6 months ago. Not recent history. This is 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But the whole point is that was there still currency? There was still currency. So to say it's irrelevant is not correct, right? And so,
or not something that needs to be
right. You don't get rid of it. Now, what I do think is important is that you have. I do think playing a little bit of defense, because the concept of too big to fail is something that's real. People think that the U.S. dollar will never go away, and if you think that, and everyone else thinks that, they group think, then if it did, you'd be screwed.
Right.
So do you hedge a little bit? Yeah. I mean, I've got a little bit of gold. I got a little bit of silver. I've got a little bit of Bitcoin, a little bit, right?
So you're still not saying keep cash in your house?
No. Do I think these should have? Yeah, for sure. Because if the house burns down or you get robbed, that cash is gone.
Cash is gone.
Right. So, and on top of that, the real answer is that there is inflation. So whether it's 2% or 6% or 10%, if you keep all your cash at the house, every day that goes by, that cash is literally worth less, and you can buy less with it, right? So you want to at least invest somewhere to keep up with inflation, just so it's worth what you have what you have day one. But do I think that you should have, for prudence, cash on hand at least a little bit? Yeah, for emergency situations. If the electricity in your town goes down for a week or two because of a hurricane, you definitely want to have something that works, because if the credit card's not working, if the internet's down, all that, you got to have cash. The ATM's not working either if you don't have electricity in your town. So having some cash in hand for a week or something like that is not a bad idea. Having some Bitcoin for fun. Do I think it's a great investment? No. People knocked out of the park a couple years ago. We had a different episode about this. But the whole point is this, is if the question is, will cash be irrelevant? No. Okay. I don't think it will be irrelevant. There's always going to be some type of currency to allow people to buy goods and services, because unfortunately Americans are more, we buy information, we buy services. We don't actually grow as much. Most Americans don't grow crops. Most Americans don't build things with their hands. They don't have tangible things to trade. The old bartering system, right? Some countries, for sure, it's still possible. And so you need to have something to buy those things. What have I seen people doing recently when they thought the end of the world was happening when COVID happened? For sure, food stores are up. The average cupboard was less than 3 days in the United States before COVID. I would love to see the most recent statistic, because I could live in my ranch for a full year and not have a problem.
Dude, you could live out of your truck for a year.
Possibly.
Way pre-COVID.
Yes. Well, I just think about this earlier, right? I will not deny that fact. I could be there
an episode of Doomsday Preppers or whatever it's
just
called.
A little bit. But things that do well in bad times, alcohol. No, don't be the one drinking it all. But people will trade for alcohol for sure in really bad times.
Yeah, trade. Yeah, I guess I remember.
Cigarettes used to be an answer. For some people, it's a necessity, right? I've seen a lot of people buying guns. A lot of people buying guns and ammo. If you go to any Walmart or Academy or World Cabela, something like that, the ammo shelves are empty. They're empty. It's kind of crazy to see this.
Stocking.
They're stockpiling. People are stockpiling guns and ammo and food and alcohol and things like that.
Randy went to buy a BB gun, a 22, right? For Walker's birthday. That was in May. And I don't know if this has anything to do with COVID or not, but it was like a 5-day turnaround time for all the background checks and everything like that.
Really? That's
Took forever. Yeah.
That's
so
funny.
Is that a COVID related thing?
No, that's going to be a local state law for a cool off period. Make sure that you're not a criminal. If you do they do background checks. You shouldn't take 5 days though in Texas.
It took way longer than.
That's interesting. Well,
but maybe they're backed up because so many people are.
That might be the case. Yeah. Because usually they just send it in. You fill out the form on computer and they send it in the federal database and they send back yes or no. If you're a concealed carrier like I am, you can go buy it on the spot.
Really?
Yeah, I can fill out paperwork and sit there for 20 minutes and leave.
Gotcha.
Because we've got the federal background checks already.
It's already done.
Yeah.
Right.
But here's the idea. You can't eat dollar bills. You can't eat or drink silver or gold.
Right.
And if you stockpile that stuff, you're going to have to get, somebody's have to be able to take it. Like if you're really talking about the worst case scenario, if we're really getting doomsday-ish, which I don't believe in, but whatever, then, how many people on the streets know what an ounce of silver is worth today or an ounce of gold is worth today? Very, 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 very few.
Yeah.
So when you go to try and get something for that, you might not even know what your ounce of silver is worth. And so
you got to Google it.
Right. Which might not work if we're talking about freaking doomsday. Right. And so, to me, it's as simple as make sure you got enough water to take care of your kids, make sure you got enough food to take care of your kids, make sure you got enough alcohol to take care of your sanity and protect yourself a little bit, have cash on hands for sure. Have a little bit hedge. What I would say though, that I've actually done recently, which is interesting is, the whole too big to fail concept of banks. I mean, we're in a weird time right now. The economy is really shaken. Yes, the stock market's recovered, but it doesn't mean that the underlying, we created more debt. I don't know if anyone's read these articles recently, but this is the first year since World War II, that the federal government created more debt than not just the federal government, but the United States created more debt than they created economy, right? They didn't create value, right? So, we're going to pay the piper. I think it's really ugly times. And so what I've personally done, for example, is, I pay attention to FDIC and making sure that I don't have all my money in one bank. I certainly don't want to exceed the FDIC limits because I want to make sure my money is insured. So if you're, touching on $500,000 or $1 million, don't keep that in cash in one bank. If it's going to be over that, it's not insured. So I think that's foolish.
But if it's an investment, that's different, correct?
It is different.
That's different. Okay.
You're banking on the company being
so
around.
you're saying don't keep $500,000 in a savings account
or more than that. More than that. Yeah.
In a bank.
The FDIC
in a checking
limits,
and savings account.
Exactly right.
So put it with a financial advisor, like put some in investment. What about money markets? Does that fall in the same thing?
Money markets, I believe, I'm going to have to fact check myself. I do believe that, I do not think money markets are FDIC insured. I think it's savings and checking only, but I need to fact check that one. So I don't want to be on the record of that one. Here's the point though, is diversification matters, right? Like the ability to put your hands on this money today if you need it today. The ability to put your hand on money overnight because you transfer money overnight is good. The ability to liquidate some funds if you needed to in a pinch. And don't touch your retirement ever unless you're freaking retired, right? So that's all long money conversation. But do I think currency will be irrelevant? Do I think dollar bills? No. Do I think they'll be devalued and will there be inflation? Yes, for sure. We'll deal with inflation for years to come because what's happened this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Cool.
So good question. Who asked the question? Just
Ashley.
Ashley.
Yes.
Thank you for asking
so
the question.
much for sure.
But let's talk about essential money conversations before getting married.
Let's do.
I have 3 kids.
Me
I'm married
too.
16 years.
12 years.
12. That's pretty. Well, you married young. That's right. I forgot.
12 years. That's a damn long
And
time.
I would say that I am more experienced, know more now, and know a lot more pitfalls today than the year before I got married. For sure.
You know what I think we have become best at?
What's
is
that?
The old phrase, pick your battles.
That's probably
I
true.
really think that we have gotten
16
to a
years
point,
in, 12 years in, yeah.
Like we really know when to go to bat for something.
Know when to hold them. Know when
for
to fold
real.
them.
It is such a
thing. Know when to walk
thing.
away, know when to run.
That's a really, really, really big lesson to learn.
Yep. And something that doesn't come easy, especially for hard-headed people like you and I.
Correct.
But money. So let's talk about this because this is what it's all about. So when you people are getting married, there's probably 3 or 4 subjects that need to be identified. When I did marriage counseling, for example, what I'd make people talk about, which were always uncomfortable, is I think people need to talk about religion. Are they aligned or not? My wife and I actually were not aligned when we got married. At the time, I was Jewish. Probably didn't believe in anything at the time. My wife was Catholic. Or sorry, not Catholic. She was Christian. My mom was Catholic. My dad was Jewish. And so I didn't really believe in much of anything at the time, if I'm honest with myself. I for sure do now. I'm currently and probably will ever be Christian at this point. But at the time, I had no idea that Christy cared about religion at all. I did not know she did some missionary work, which is kind of interesting to know after I got married.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I never talked to her about religion because we didn't ever go to church together or anything like that. So I just didn't think she cared.
And how old were y'all when y'all got married?
So I got married in 2004. So I've been married for 16 years. So I was 25, 26 years old.
Okay.
25 engaged, 26 married.
Okay. And Christy's 2 years older than you, right? 1 year older?
2
years older.
Yeah, so she's...
So 28. So
she's 28,
she was almost 30, which is good. Okay.
27, 28, because we got... she was 27 because she had Aubrey when she was 30.
Okay. And I was 23. Randy's 6 years older than me. So
23, 29.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one, what I'd say is talk about religion. You know, you got to make sure you're aligned, you know, depending on what religion you are. There's this concept of being, you know, yoked, like
Mm-hmm.
yokes. But that's an important conversation for anyone, because if it's important to one side, you know, that's going to come to fruition afterwards. And so
Absolutely.
I made a big mistake of the 5 biggest things you can not talk about. I didn't talk about any of the 5 before I got married. And so I'm going to go through those 5 with you guys, and one happens to be money, right? So religion was the first one for us. The second one, my mother still works. She's got a couple PhDs. She's just a really smart lady, and she loves to work. And she, you know, so I had a working mom coming up. My wife Christy had a stay-at-home mother, and so she was totally ready and willing to stay home day one from having kids. She does stay home.
Mm-hmm.
But I had no clue.
Didn't know that was gonna
I had no clue that was going to happen, which does affect finances if you haven't thought about this. And so talking about, are we going to both work? Who's going to be the primary caregiver? What are we going to do after we have kids? Do we want to have kids would be a big question.
Would you want to have kids?
Because one of ours, by the way, was I wanted 2 kids. She wanted 3. There was no splitting the difference. Right. I actually lost a bet on that one. So, and it's the best bet I ever lost. Presley is amazing, but you know, how many kids comes up. Fourth one has to do with money in general, right? Like savings, who's a saver, who's a spender, how much do you have, how much do we need to retire? Like what's important to you or not? You know, especially this day and age, there's kids that are totally happy working a little bit to make a little bit of money to spend every dollar on experiences and travel the world, which we've talked about in a different episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's super cool as long as you're both aligned, right? Like I've got a lady that works for me right now. I'm not going to say who, but a girl that works for me, I had a great conversation with a week ago, and in this new world of working remote, she is unmarried. And so she said, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy a little VW bus, and I'm going to go tour around all the different national parks. And I'm just going to look ahead to make sure that wherever I go to has Wi-Fi, or I have a hotspot availability, because I can work anywhere.
I mean,
I was like, well, shit, girl, if you're going to do it now.
Do it now.
Because, you know, when you get married, that might not be his idea, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So money for sure. You know, what does it look like? What are we trying to accomplish together? Are we aligned here? Are we working to live? Are we living to work? Like that's all big conversations. Last piece is credit. You know, what do you know about credit? Shit, girl, what's your credit score? What's my credit score? Do we have credit scores?
Do you have any credit scores?
Right. Are you bringing a lot of debt in this marriage that I need to know about?
Yeah.
Do you have some hard assets that I need to know about? Like, what's your thoughts on joining our money? Or, you know, because I kind of think if you're married, you should have your money all joint. A lot of people that I know of are
yours, mine.
Yours is yours, mine is mine. And what does that look like? If I were to add a couple asterisks on here, one of them would be, you know, is one party okay with a prenup or not?
Yeah.
Right? Who wants prenup? We want prenup. You know, I hate to say it, but people that have assets to lose day one, especially coming into marriage that's not totally aligned, you know, you plan for the best, but it doesn't always work that way. And, you know, going down to if my kids, for example, inherit stuff, they don't piss me off enough, they don't give it all to charity. If they inherit something, for sure, I'm not working my entire life to give money to a future ex. Yeah. So for sure, the kids that participate in money that I earn that's going to go down, it's going to stay with my kids and my grandkids and my great grandkids through trust choices, through a prenup or something like that, which is the other spouse going to be okay with that or not? You know, those are conversations to have before you get married.
They really are.
And hopefully not the day before the wedding day either. So
preferably.
What did I miss in my short list? So I had some
that I wrote down was for sure credit. What's your credit score? Do you have credit scores? Do you have any outstanding debt? Do you have any tickets that are unpaid?
Tell me the ticket story. I know about this one. That's funny.
So Randy and I both went to Texas Tech. So there's a lot of travel that happens when you're in Lubbock, going back to Dallas, going back to San Antonio, and all the cities in between. And, sometimes you get parking tickets. Sometimes you get speeding tickets going through those towns. And if you don't pay them, they turn into warrants. And so we went on a little warrant roundup.
Yep.
And went through and paid off all the tickets that had been collected over our 4 to 6 to 8 years of traveling back and forth from Lubbock.
Couple victory laps there.
So I'm really glad we did that. I can't believe we did that. I feel like that was very mature of us to do. Like,
you literally went town to town paying off
literally paying tickets, paying them all off, but we got it all done. What kind of debt are you holding now? Do you have any retail store debts that I really would prefer not to throw those onto my bandwagon when we get married?
Yep.
Those types of things are huge. What are your savings habits and how do you feel about saving? I've said this before. We did not hit a major turning point in our marriage as far as money goes until I told him I was embarrassed by the way that we handle our money. And that hit him like a ton of bricks. That was the word that changed everything. And he came back, obviously did not just sit well, and we moved on. There was a little bit of an argument. And then finally, when we came back together to talk about it, he said, I really think that we fundamentally have 2 different relationships with money.
That's interesting.
Just 2 fundamentally different relationships with money. And so, wow, that was 6 years into marriage. So if
Maybe we should have talked about that
how
earlier.
far ahead would we have been if we would have just had those conversations?
Yep.
So that's very interesting. Private school versus public school.
That was one I lost too. By the way.
Yeah. And Randy would definitely prefer that the kids go to private school. So I had never had any experience with private school. So I'm like, no, why? I don't get it. I'm changing my tune at this point now. Even though I think our schools are absolutely fantastic. Our public schools are, or at least the ones that my kids go to. I really feel very, very fortunate because I know that in other cities like Houston, for example, really the best option is public school because of the way that it's just a very different structure than San Antonio.
Right.
And so having that $20,000 or $30,000 a year built into your budget is that's a huge game changer. Yep. So I feel very fortunate about that. And then what are your goals? What do you want to make? How much, what are you aiming for? Yeah. Not even what do you want to do, but how much do you want to make? Because I think if you have an idea of what you're shooting for, then you can kind of back into different career paths.
Yep.
Do what makes you happy, but also back into that are my choices of career going to get me to that point?
Or us to that point. If one person wants to stay home and the other wants to be a social worker, I'm not saying it can't be done, but you better make some really good budgeting choices early if the primary breadwinner is a social worker.
Yes,
right?
yes,
and
absolutely.
if the other spouse is not contributing to the financial burden. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Right. So that's what I wrote down.
I love that. I think it's all good stuff. And it's I'm going to tell you a couple war stories from my office. Okay. So here's some other things that you would hope that your future spouse would come clean on at some point earlier in the relationships. But the reason I'm going to say this is there was actually an article that came out. I want to say it was out of New York. I don't remember where I read it, but it was literally this last week where this newlywed couple, they did their big announcement that went into the local newspaper, and the groom was writing all this wonderful stuff about how I met her 3 years ago and where I met her and how I knew instantaneously this was a woman for me and all this stuff. And his ex-wife responded back to the newspaper and on Facebook and on Twitter and everywhere else, saying, does that homewrecker not know that she wrecked a home? Because the timeline was overlapped by a year. He was going through a divorce 3 years earlier. He was able to get away with it for the year of overlap. And this new bride had no idea, right? Well, how does that impact? I see this in mortgages. So there's a story I have from probably 10 years ago now in my old office. And I think you had just started, you might remember this, but I'd been counseling this gonna get married couple. They were right out of college. And they came in really early. They were super forward thinking as a couple. And they were talking about, hey, when we graduate, they were in college when I met them the first time. When we graduate, we want to be ready to buy a house. So we want to get pre-qualified. We want to understand what it all looks like. We want to know what we need to save for because we've been high school sweethearts and went through college together. And we're going to go get married, right? It's like, awesome. So a year goes by. It's like one of these like American dream stories, right? The high school sweethearts, they stay together all the way through. They're going to go get married. And I'm going through it. They come back a year later out of nowhere and they're like, hey, Josh, we found a house. We graduated. We're ready to buy. And I say, cool, come in my office and sit down. And so we're going through the loan application, and there's one question, like there's these things called declarations. The declarations are things like, are you a U.S. citizen? Yes or no? Are you a residential alien? Is this your primary residence or investment property? And then you start getting to the bottom, and it says, do you pay or receive alimony or child support? And she, of course, said no, and he said yes. And so at that moment, I remember that the air got sucked out of the office. It was like a black hole.
I can't even.
And so I felt the energy, but I was like, well, certainly she knows, right? And so he said yes. I said, okay, cool. What is it? And he said child support. And I said, and the follow-up question is how much and how long, right? And it was, $600 a month for the next 17 and a half years.
Is
right?
The baby's 6 months old.
The baby's 6 months old. They got married 6 months ago.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, so they got married literally at the same time that the child support order was put in place, which means that the year of engagement or 2 years of engagement, she had knocked this girl up. They had the baby. He agreed to child support for the next 17 and a half years. And the time that he decided to come clean was in my freaking office. To this day,
I guess he was probably like,
right. Well, maybe he thought like it'd be fraud, which it would be, but maybe he thought, oh my God, like off guard, and it's I'm filling out a financial loan application. Right. I can't not lie.
She can't kill me in public in front of this nice man.
So I just remember like she's staring a hole into his ear, like through his head.
Yeah.
And he's just eye contact with me, and his eyes are kind of wide, and I was like, okay, cool. And I just I remember thinking to myself, like, you know what, I should probably leave the office for just a second. I said, perfect. I've got to go get this printed up, and I'll be right back. And so I left the office and I shut the door, and it was World War III in my office. It
can only imagine.
Was crazy. And this girl is a wonderful, beautiful, pristine girl. And it's living hell for him in that room for sure. And I walk out of the office and I leave the office. Like I go out in the hallway that's in this big building, and across the hallway was the bank, and the bank had a security guard. And the security guard comes running across. I was like, do not go in there.
Don't go in there.
It will be the end of your life. And he's like, what's going on? I told him. He's like, oh, I totally understand. He turned around and walks away. So about 10 minutes later, it gets quiet. And I finally walk in there. And I sit down, and she says, Josh, we need to rethink everything.
You're like, so you guys ready to sign your loan app?
Right. So they left, and I've to this day never heard from them.
Oh my gosh.
That's something you would want to know before you get married. And so when I did the little asterisk thing, it's amazing to me how many people pull credit, right? So I'm doing a mortgage loan application again. I'm going through the credit, the liabilities. Mm-hmm. So you have this car at Security Service for $500. You have this one at Bank of America for this amount. You've got this credit card for $17,200 minimum payment. And then one or the other will say, no, we don't. That's not right. And then the other one will be like, well yeah, honey, I have that one. Or I'll get calls before a loan application where the husband or wife will literally tell me, please don't bring up the credit card.
Oh, no.
Right? So that happens every single day. And then you've got, my
question is, how do you do that?
Well,
I guess if you have totally separate accounts, then
separate accounts, credit cards going separate places, one person checking the mail, not the other. A lot of stuff. Co-signers on families' cards. That's one that crushes a lot of deals. A lot is, sometimes it's a good thing where a parent brings a kid on. Like I'll do that for my kids to improve their credit. Sometimes the parents are deadbeats themselves. They open a credit card in the kid's name. The kid has no idea because they've never pulled credit themselves, right?
Right.
And so basic things I really think are important when you're really getting to this. And it sounds so like not romantic. And I get that I sound like a jerk.
No, that's...
I would recommend a damn credit report I would recommend for sure that you actually do a felony background check. You can do it for $20.
Really?
Yeah, you can go online for $20 and look up anyone's name, social, and date of birth and find out if they've got it's public records. Like, do you have a felony? Do you have bankruptcies, foreclosures? All those things are actually public records. Like you can pull credit and find out all that stuff. So,
and here's the thing. Is it uncomfortable? 100%. Is it
important?
Well, yes, but if you can make it through these really, really uncomfortable conversations, one, just getting through them as an engaged couple, or heck, even just being, just dating at this point. Holy shit, your marriage has a really a whole lot better chance of being able to survive because this stuff, it comes up. And it can't be avoided.
It can break relationships because then one person feels lied to or betrayed after the fact. So,
and then if you have kids involved by the time it comes up, then now it's way worse. So, if you can do these little tests and have these conversations in we have nothing to lose, quote unquote. We're not married, no kids. We're not,
Listen, if you're agreeing to marry me for the rest of my life, I should be agreeing to answer any question that you have about anything and vice versa, right? That's transparency. And so, what are the things we need to talk? We just listed off a dozen. Yeah. But people avoid them. A, probably because they don't think to ask it. B, it's super trusting.
You don't know it's important. Oh yeah. You don't know it's important. And if you don't have someone telling you that it's important, then why deal with this?
Well, and then the other piece of it is, myself included, like I didn't know anything about credit back in college. So
what's really cute.
Christy had 700 credit scores and I had low 600 credit scores. 600s are good enough.
Randy didn't have any.
Well, there you go.
He ain't got none.
Yeah, no credit at all, right?
No credit.
If this is someone you're going to work with, okay, for sure, you're not going to pay the bills, honey, because you've never paid your bills ever. So that's going to be my responsibility. Right? I mean, it's basic conversations about money that will set you up for success. But what to look for, it's as simple as, and this goes back to you asked a question earlier on, is it best to do it by yourself? I would think that you should be at a relationship level to be able to do that.
Do what?
To have a conversation about this by yourself, right? Oh. Like husband and wife?
Oh, yeah.
Or future husband and wife?
In my opinion, or should you bring in a mediator?
Should you bring in a mediator or get marriage counseling? I think you put the professionals on it because a professional, you can literally call your marriage counselor and say, do me a favor. Would you please bring up money, ask about credit, ask about this? Then if you don't feel comfortable, hey, how much money do you have? How much do you want to make? What do you want to make? Right. Some of the questions that you don't feel comfortable asking for whatever reason, they still need to be asked because in my business, and I think in all business, there's this concept of swallow the frog. There's a book about it.
Yeah.
Eat the frog.
Eat that frog.
And the idea behind it is that it's not going to get any better. The longer that it sits there and waits, and it's like a landmine that's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger that you're eventually step on. It'll be way worse down the road than just get it over with.
Just get it over with. I think the other piece is that you don't know, you're not thinking about how much money do we want to make you're not thinking about that.
Not at all.
And so use this as a resource too of things that, I should be thinking about that because it will come up. And
one of the biggest assignments I would give everyone in the first or second group session that I would do with when I was officiating marriages was I tell them to go home and do their 10-year vision individually. Write down your 10-year vision in vivid detail. Where do you live? Do you have a house? Do you have 2 houses? What do you make? Do you have kids? How many kids do you have? And I tell them, don't say anything together. Don't write it together. Yeah. Don't pre-read it together. You're going to write it individually and come back to me. And then when they would read it, it's amazing how many people that I could tell, oh, you're pretty damn aligned because you kind of said the same thing. So either you cheated on your homework assignment or you actually talked about this in the past. Yeah. And then,
or you're just, that's one of the things that's pulling all together.
And then how big of a variance there was in some things, around religion or money or politics or whatever, age to retire. You really want to buy a house in the next 5 years? Do I want to travel the world? I had that comment come up one time. I was like,
that was one I thought about too that I didn't write down is home ownership. How important is it to you? And
do you all the way down at by what age you want to retire? How much do you think we need? All those things can come out really quickly. And then we'd have them read it to each of them would read it to each other. And there was a lot of light bulbs going off. And I said, perfect. Now I want you guys to go on a date night before next gathering in a week. And on your date night, go back and rewrite your 10-year vision together.
That's cool.
Like, just go back and talk about like, okay, so what parts of yours do you agree to? And like, you're on the same page. What parts of mine do you agree to? We're on the same page, and let's mash those together. And then it's going to force a conversation of, well, what about this? You want one kid. I came from a family of 5 kids.
5 kids, yeah.
Like I need to at least have 3. I want my kids to have at least brothers and sisters.
3 was my number all along. Like I just knew
Christy
that.
apparently had that number all along too. And I thought I was gonna have 1. And I thought I was only gonna have a boy. And then I had 2. I had a girl and a boy. And then she's like, yeah, I want a third one. I was like, not a chance in hell.
Buckle
she's
up,
like, I bet you. And it's actually a funny story. I'll tell this one. So I was in my awesome wife, Christy, every once in a while comes hunting with me. And at the time, she definitely didn't like to hunt. And I've always liked to hunt. And once a year, twice a year, she would, especially early in a relationship, she'd come sit in a deer blind with me for a day. And this was like, it was right around Thanksgiving in 2011. So Thanksgiving 2011, I was in a deer blind, and we just started talking about, she told me what crushed me inside was she said, I feel like, that I'm unfulfilled. There's one child I haven't had yet. Like I feel this. I'm like, I'm really sorry you feel that way, because I feel really full. And
that's really unfortunate for you.
And we're stuck. Yeah, we're stuck in this box, right? We're in a deer blind in Texas in the cold, and we're stuck in this box, and there's not a deer to be seen. And so we're gonna talk to each other for 3-4 hours, right? With some guns, right? And so, but she kept pushing and pushing. She's like, no, I really want to have a 3rd kid. I'm ready. And I'm like, that's really sad for you. Like I'm for sure done. Like 2 is good for me. We have our girl, we have our boy. That's all I can handle. And so she made me agree to the best bet that I ever lost. And she said, we at least give it a chance. And I said, tell you what, because I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's Thanksgiving. I said, if you want to pull the plug on the whole birth control thing, if we are pregnant by New Year's, then it was meant to be.
Oh, damn.
By New Year's, it was meant to be.
Thanksgiving to New Year's.
God wants us to have a 3rd kid. Okay, I can't argue with that. But I need you to be okay with, if we're not pregnant by New Year's, like that chapter is closed. And I'm thinking to myself, like 30 days, I'm just going to hold out. Like no problem at all.
Whatever.
August,
remember the way we started this conversation.
Right. August 12/12 was when my beautiful little baby.
Oh my God, it didn't take long at all.
Yeah, 8/12/12. So
hilarious.
It didn't take long at all, because it was like the next week. Christy would like attack. She was like a tigress. She'd be like hiding when I come home. She'd like attack me. I'm like, damn, no. Okay. And I was like, I still thought there's no way in the first month. Like there's no way.
Oh my God, she got it's me. Amazing.
And now I get to, but I love that little girl. I love
Presley.
Love that little girl. It's
so
the best thing
cute.
ever. But again, it would have been good to have that conversation before we were married.
No, for
because, going down that list, it's really funny. Whether I conceded, I lost, or my wife is just smarter than me. Either of the 3 doesn't matter. I didn't believe in God. She believed in Jesus. Now we both do. She wanted public school. I wanted private school. Our kids are in public school. She wanted 3 kids. I wanted 2 kids. We have 3 kids. She wanted to be a stay-at-home wife. I wanted her to be a working wife. She definitely stays at home. What did I miss? There's a 5th one. Private school.
What was that?
Living in Texas.
Oh, yeah?
I wanted to not live in Texas. I wanted to travel the world, because I've lived in a lot of states growing up and a lot of countries growing up. And she's like, I will live and die in Texas.
That's right, not going anywhere.
And I am here 20 years later. So
I love it.
It happened to work out for us.
Christy the closer.
Yeah. It happened to work out for us. But my point is, in any of those 5 places, separate of money, separate of credit, separate of not being married before, separate of not having kids before with child support that we didn't know about, separate of not having 1,000 tickets and warrants out for arrest, separate of not having a felony conviction that'd be great for you to know about.
Yeah.
Like any one of those things we could have crossed, we could have gotten in a dogfight. And
absolutely.
It could have been a point of contention big enough to cost the marriage.
Well, and here's what happens. This goes back to pick your battles. Marriage is full of small annoyances. Okay. So the way that they breathe becomes an issue, like at times, but the way they leave their socks on the floor, the way that they leave the sponge in the sink rather than putting it on the top. Okay. So when you're around somebody for that amount of time, cohabitating, the anxiety levels and those little things start to grate on you. Okay. So absolutely, you throw on, oh my gosh, you have a freaking $10,000 bill that, now that's preventing us from doing something that we wanted to do together, like buy a house. Yeah, it goes down real fast. It can be the straw that broke the camel's back, right? And so I think
this is where it goes to the non-negotiables.
100%.
This is the key, because what you said is spot on. Like, I'd like to believe that my wife loves and adores every piece of my body and soul.
She
right?
does not.
She for sure doesn't.
She does not.
Why are you saying that with such conviction? Do you know?
Because I'm around you a lot too, Josh.
I feel attacked. But I know that to be true, right? I know I'm hard to live with, let alone work with. And so, but here's what one of my homework assignments is at my company, within our team, with our core values, with marriage in general, is what are the non-negotiables?
Yes.
And again, that's something that we like in all those marriage counselings I did, we'd talk about what are your non-negotiables both ways before the marriage. So what is a non-negotiable, right? So there's lots of annoyances that I would rather something be different.
Right.
But I'm not going to leave you over it.
Not going to leave, right.
But there are a few things that are absolute issues for me and for everyone.
They're deal breakers.
It's a deal breaker. So what's that non-negotiable, right? So for some people, it might be lying. So for some people, it might be cheating. For some people, it might be hiding money. Mm-hmm. For some people, I mean, there's a laundry list. For some people,
work ethic.
I'm just trying to think about it. Yeah, work ethic is one. Being helpful with children, or not participating with children,
or disciplinary styles. With children. I mean,
pornography. There's all sorts of stuff that came into those conversations. I'm just trying to think of them all that were really clear. And it's funny when you really just have that honest conversation, like
broken family relationships. Like if you're having estranged,
like don't make me choose between my entire family and you.
Oh yeah.
Don't or brother. Like, hey, I know my brother's a little, or my sister. I'm not specifically talking about my brother.
Right.
But I know my brother's a little bit hard to deal with, but he's my damn brother. And that's not going to change ever. So I need you to be okay with, like, once a year, he's going to act out at a Christmas party and I will talk to him and you'll be upset, but he's my brother. Like he's my blood. Mm-hmm. Like I choose you. I also choose, I didn't get to choose him. I choose him. Right. Mm-hmm. So being really clear about those things, you can see the light bulb is going off of, okay, I know what lines not to cross, right?
Absolutely.
Like, we all know in a lot of marriages, there's this concept of love and respect that comes up. Mm-hmm. Like, for most women, it's all about, if I don't feel loved, I'm not going to respect you. If I don't feel respect as a man, I'm not going to love you. And we are really bad about, especially with our partners, knowing exactly what cut to make. Yeah. The smallest cut that bleeds the most.
And the other thing that happens is which comes first.
Right.
That's the that's the hard piece is like, Randy and I have gone round and round about this. Like, when if he's being inconsistent in a behavior, it drives me crazy, which makes me inconsistent. So, and my inconsistency drives him crazy. Yep. So which one was inconsistent first? Right. Because we're fueling each other.
And around we go.
Round and round.
And that's the thing is that those things end up with somebody stepping on a landmine that they didn't even know is non-negotiable, right? Mm-hmm. But for example, for me, I'll just give you one of mine. I'm not going to go into my laundry with my wife because that's our personal business. But for me, as an example, do not threaten me with divorce.
Oh, yeah.
If you say you better mean it.
Don't drop the D word unless you mean it.
Like the D word is the worst word in my household. Like, don't even consider breathing it.
Right.
Because
unless you're willing to go sign the papers.
The kind of person of, okay.
Yeah.
Don't try to call off a bluff. Don't try to bluff me. Like, you better mean it.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about that is, like a lot of marriages, I'd like to believe that every single day is roses, right? But there's been times that we've gotten to battle. But that's one line that Christy won't cross. Because,
which is good.
Because she's very clear that is a non-negotiable for me. That's a non-negotiable. So that kind of conversation, just what are the 2 or 3 hey, no, it really would bother you, but I'm probably not going to stop that thing. Like, I know that you don't like me gambling with my buddies and having a poker night. I know, but you're going to divorce me if I keep having my poker night every Wednesday, as an example, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, no, you're not going to divorce me of that. That doesn't mean I'm going to push the buttons. It's good for me to know that annoys you, right?
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Let's not do the non-negotiables. That's a problem.
Cheating
is a big one for some people, right?
Cheating is a big one, yeah. One thing I wrote down was financial advisors are a great way to uncover all these questions, specifically around money, because as an example, when we went and sat down with Ron, he asked these questions. Yep. And there were some things that we kind of just sit and look at each other like, oh, I don't know. We haven't even thought about that. A lot of them, thankfully, we And a lot of this, guys, is just by chance that Randy and I have a lot of alignment in the way that we wanted to structure our lives. Thank God, because we didn't talk about it.
Right.
It just so happens that we feel the same way about a lot of things. But, he asked us, like, how do you feel about college? Do you feel like the student should pay for it and get loans? Do you want to pay half? Do you want to pay it all? Like, okay, that's a good question, right? So luckily we both had the same answer. We're going to pay for it all. We're going to save for it and pay for it. But when do you want to retire? And do you know how much? Yeah, with how much? And what do you want your lifestyle to look like? Do you want to travel? All of these things. So if the thought of going to a marriage counselor or a mediator is kind of like, oh my gosh, I would never do that, then kill two birds with one stone. Go to a financial advisor because you need to get a head start on investing and things like that anyway, and setting up your safety nets. But also it'll dig up some questions.
I'm sure there's dozens of people listening right now. They're like, I have nothing to invest, so why would I go to a financial planner right now? Yeah. So like, that's not the point. It's starting the conversation. You got to start the conversation before you're married, not when you realize that no matter how much you earn, this other person is a whirlpool. And it's like, are you going to be okay with that? If you're going to be the primary breadwinner, as an example, are you going to be okay working the next 40 years of your life to not be able to retire because every dollar's been spent along the way? Because you might be signing up for that and not know it, right?
Another really good one is, do you expect any large sums of money to be coming your way from family members? If someone passes away, are you written in somewhere that and if so, what is your stance on that? Am I going to be included in that? Is it going to go into family money? Is it because it's your family, it's yours?
Right.
That's an interesting.
Yeah. And that goes really into that piece that I said a little asterisk about of, I don't think it's romantic. I don't think it's romantic to talk about a prenup. I do.
Neither is divorce.
Yeah. Divorce is, and trying to explain to your papa that half of his family ranch just went to somebody who was married to you for 3 years, right? And it's 100-year-old ranch or whatever.
Right.
So, but I think my point is though, is that coming into marriage, and I'm not an attorney, and every state's a little different because of different laws regarding community property or separate property, things like that. But for the most part, most states, when you come into a marriage, if you keep things separate, if there's a house, let's say you've got a rental property. Maybe you owned the house, you bought a house before you ever started a relationship, and you made every payment on that house and all that. And the money that you're making payments on the mortgage is coming from your account. There's ways to keep that asset sold and separate even after marriage, so that God forbid something happened, it's still your house.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen it where, somebody's got the house and somebody that's a deadbeat moves in and gets married, and then half the house and the car goes with the deadbeat 3 years later. I do think that there's a point for everyone. If you, if you're an entrepreneur and you're building a company, like what's that company value going to be? That's 100% on your back. Prenups, I do think, are warranted, and they're probably the most avoided conversation.
They have to be the most avoided. I wonder how many marriages have prenups. I wonder how many first marriages.
That's a great question.
Have prenups.
And that'd be an interesting statistic, because how many second marriages
do?
I guarantee you that the percentage is off the charts for the second marriage.
I would think, though, part of that comes from being younger and not feeling like you have anything that's
valuable.
That's worth potentially rocking the boat so hard with the topic of a prenup.
Yep.
That is worth it.
Right.
So, but as you get older and you acquire more assets, second marriages, a lot more on the line. So that would be very interesting to know.
I don't know an easy way to do it. I don't think there's an easy way to do it. I think it just goes back to communication.
I honestly don't know how I would react.
Well, I think a lot of people would walk away from the relationship.
Which is the point anyway.
What's that?
Which is the point anyway. Like, if that's going to be the pushing factor,
right?
That's why we're doing this, right?
I think it's easy to argue both sides. I'm sure somebody will pipe up on this on the thread after listening to this. But
Because you're always in the back of your head thinking like, what if?
I don't believe in plan Bs, right? I think that you're supposed to go.
Best advice.
You're right. Like in the opposite of plan B, plan A looks really good and you're going to make your marriage work. And I am an optimist from that perspective. And like, we're going to go through it, but there's non-negotiables for everyone. Mm-hmm. So if the non-negotiable is stepped on once or twice or too many times,
right.
That's why there's marriages that don't work out long-term. Right. Mm-hmm. And so what I do know, just being a business person that has owned multiple companies in my life, I know that working out how a business relationship ends ahead of time results in maybe a business partnership that's dissolved, but with two happy people.
Yeah.
Because there was no argument at the end. Like sure. Going into it, if something happened, this is what we do, we both agree to it, there's nothing to argue about at the end. It's already done. Right?
Yeah.
So I can tell you that I've seen bitter divorces.
Oh yeah.
That destroy the view of their partnership, dissolved or otherwise, from the children's view.
Yeah.
Because the children think that daddy didn't take care of mommy enough, or mommy didn't take care of daddy, or I just watched them argue for 3 years because neither would agree to the terms and conditions of the divorce, right? That could have all been avoided if there was a prenup that says, hey, listen, you can have a prenup that literally says 50 cents on the dollar of every asset's divided, appraisals, and there will be no alimony or child support. Either way, we're going to agree to 50-50 partnership in the kids. We're going to agree to 50-50 partnership in all the assets. We can agree that up front. There's nothing to argue, right?
Yeah. But then that also goes to, that'll bring up some of these questions. Like, are we both going to work? Because if we're going to do 50-50 and I'm not going to get any child support, I should probably start a career.
Yeah. Details.
If I'm going to be.
Or have at least a finger in the water, toe in the water.
Sure.
So, and again, I'm preaching from the stands a little bit, but I've seen the back end so many times of how bad it gets.
Yeah.
It's really awesome as a man or woman to watch somebody trying to pre-qualify for a house that they can't qualify for because of the amount of alimony or child support.
Oh man.
That is more than what it would take for the house, right? Mm-hmm. And then the people that are renting for
same on the flip side, same with student loans. When somebody can't qualify because of a student loan,
it's bad.
That also is, it's just gut wrenching to me. Yeah. I know that was a huge eye opener when I first got into the mortgage business. I was like, oh my gosh, which I did then had to call my parents and thank them one more time for paying for my college because anyway,
that's a big thing.
It's really big. Yep. So does your partner have student loans? I mean, because that is not going to prohibit us from being able to get a house.
And maybe that wouldn't stop you from getting married or not. All I'm saying is that it would give you a plan. Like, hey, we need to attack this because I'd like to own a house in the next 5 years. So
absolutely,
let's attack your debt, which means no, we're not going to go on 1,000 trips between now and 5 years because I want to buy a house. I want to buy a house. Bring up my kids in a home that we own, right?
Absolutely.
And I think I know we want to wrap this up, but I think that's the whole point about this conversation is to have the conversations.
Yeah.
Like knowledge is power, and you have a better outcome by knowing all the pieces that you're working with.
100%.
And when you go into something blind on the faith that love will conquer all, which is what every person saying at the altar thinks, love will conquer all.
Absolutely.
And you talk to every 30 or 50-year married couple and you say, hey, how'd you make it? And the guys will all say one thing. Learn to say yes, honey. Yes. Like that's what every 50-year married, right? Happy wife, happy life. Like, but how did they arrive at that point?
Yeah.
That's because they communicated a lot. Non-negotiables weren't stepped on.
Picking your battles.
And probably knowing each other.
Marriage is it's so great. It really is. It's so rewarding and it's so awesome. It's also really hard work. And so I think that it deserves this amount of preparation to make it the long haul. And so I can already hear people saying like, gosh, like, why would I do all that? So much work to like do all of those things before we get married. Like gross. We're busy planning the wedding and picking out china and dresses and all of that.
Yeah, let's just spend $100,000 in a wedding and hope that it makes it for 2 years.
Hope that it makes it. And it is hard work. So think of this as like applying for the hardest job that you will ever get. That's the best way to look at it because it's
second hardest. I'll say parenting first.
Parenting is pretty damn hard. It's even harder with a crappy spouse.
Right. That's very true.
So I just, it's worth putting in the effort. And again, if you can make it through this like really hard stuff to talk about, in an engagement phase or even a dating phase, man, you stand a really good chance to make it through some of the massive things that come up in marriage.
Cool. Well, I think that's our conclusion for this episode of Sigman Sense. Please like, subscribe, share,
tell your
send
friends.
us emails, ask questions. We'd love to help you out more, but we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye, guys.